You know, in the scriptures, it always seems as the Jews are plotting against Jesus, as we hear in the gospel today, there's always a little more to the story. There were various times that before they could go into the temple to pray, that they had to go through a purification rite. And it was because of certain circumstances in their lives. For women, it was after giving childbirth. For those Jews who question Jesus today, they would not be able to enter the temple, and the reason being they touched a graven image. When Jesus said to them, "Produce the coin," they had to touch it. And so they were faced with this dilemma in their life. And so having touched it, they were not allowed to go to the temple until they had been purified from touching that graven image. There's so many different ways in our lives that we face issues, and sometimes it all boils down to one thing. To whom do we belong? What is it that we gain our identity from, our sense of value? It's a basic question to reflect upon in our lives from time to time so that we don't get lost in just the routine of living and fall into a pattern. A window cleaner was working on the scaffold outside the 20th floor of a skyscraper, surprised to see his secretary pressing a large sheet of paper up to the window. It was the first day of a really cold winter in Denver. And on this sheet of paper, the secretary had written, "It's 72 degrees in here." Undaunted, the half-frozen window cleaner reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen and notebook, scribbled a message of his own. With a big smile, he held it close to the window. He said, "It's $75 an hour out here." In our conversations, in our validation, how often is it that we prove our worth or feel success depending upon what we have control of, or what we own, or what we manage, or what we have in a way of saying, "This is mine, and it's not yours, and I have more of it." When we think about this sacred trust that by the age of 10, our children have spent probably half their lives with us, and then they'll be going out on their own to know our value. Who owns whom? Because when we cross that line and thinking that our value is upon that which we think that we control, actually it's those things or those attitudes or those thoughts that we have power that own us. And there's only one way to go in our lives where we truly realize that we have value. If you're a parent, your children are not your own. They're a gift given. We all belong to the community of God. Sometimes we fall into this other thought, it's my body. It's mine to own, but it's a sacred trust with God and the community. That's why we believe so strongly in the protection of human life, because it's a sacred place where the Holy Spirit dwells, to know what it is that we hand on. When Johnny was 10 years old, he broke his glasses. He heard his mother call the insurance company and report they were stolen, so the insurance company would pay for a new pair. In high school, Johnny's coach showed him how to hold onto an opponent's shirt while throwing a block so the referee wouldn't see it. When he got to college, he found he could buy answers to some professor's tests or hire certain students to write his term papers for him. And he could do this because professors who claimed to be diligent in research and up-to-date in class preparation had not rewritten those exams or given different instructions in years. So when caught at cheating and expelled from school, Johnny's parents, teachers, and friends couldn't believe it. Hadn't they taught him right from wrong? They had, by example more than by talk. A vendor was selling mangoes and not having much luck at all. But then the vendor took a bite of that mango, and the people could see how delicious it was by the expression on their face. And then soon all those mangoes were sold. Now, we're not selling our faith, but our experience of tasting the presence of God in our lives has a dramatic effect upon those with whom our lives come in contact, because it's a way in which we come to be present to one another because we're first present to God. That wedding garment that we heard of last week that wasn't worn by one of the attendants at the wedding feast wasn't because he couldn't afford it, that he didn't have the ability to go out and get one. That wedding garment was given to him with the invitation. And we recall that that was our baptism and our baptismal garment. And when we reflect upon whether we wear our faith or not, whether we interiorized it, that's become so much a part of our lives. Well, the Jews have this dilemma that they're presenting to Jesus. Should he pay it and please them and cause others to be dismayed, or not pay it? There are 3 taxes that the people paid in Jesus' time. One was a ground tax, 1/10 of grain, 1/5 of oil. An income tax was 1% of the person's income, and a poll tax. That was for a person aged 14 to 65 if they were a male, female 12 to 75, and it amounted to 1 day's wages. The tax that's being spoken of in the gospel today is a poll tax, 1 day's wage. So when we think about Jesus' response, that what belongs to Caesar, you give to Caesar, and what belongs to God, you give to God. A basic way of living our lives. We think, too, it's not just mom's job, or dad's job, our religious job when we're paying our taxes, when we're returning to God. When we think of that dynamic, it's not just mom's job to clean or to cook. We all help. It's not just dad's job to do certain things, to mow the grass or whatever that might be. We all can help. It's not just the religious job to take care of certain aspects, to live our faith for us. It's not just the maintenance staff to take care of things. You see something on the floor that needs to be picked up, we pick it up and put it in the trash. We're a community. We're a larger family, joined together by our baptism. We're brothers and sisters. We not only have jobs that we're responsible for, we help each other to fulfill those tasks. He paid with a Roman coin. They violated, by touching that coin, their second commandment of touching a graven image. They thought they had the winning hand, but it was not what they thought. Show me the coin. Whose image is on it? Caesar's. What do we owe God? We owe him our spiritual lives. When we think about why we do things, why do you do things for your family, for your friends, out of love, without thinking about the cost? Why does the church ask us to contribute so that the gospel can be spread? But more importantly, so that we have a connection, that we give something of value in our lives to God, to the measure in which he has blessed us. If we don't participate in the life of the church in different ways, in sharing our talents, sharing our treasure, praying, then we're missing out on an incredible opportunity to grow. We expect our children to grow up and to mature. And in doing so, we teach them how to help, how to encourage, to reach out to others. When we find ourselves not participating in the life of the parish or the church, we really miss out on being part of something bigger than ourselves. Because we can be so isolated, we can have such a small unit and concept of thought that we can't reach out and help each other because we've isolated ourselves. It doesn't matter what we give in the Sunday collection, but it does matter whether we give or not. Because there's a different relationship when we give part of that treasure and we're saying, it's not how I value who I am. There's a man who was very wealthy and he said, I'm going to stop giving. I'm going to start returning because I realized it wasn't mine in the first place. That my abilities and what I have has been a gift from God. But think about it. When we participate and give something of value to another person or group, we feel more a part of that group. We feel a deeper relationship. So we've heard in the past, it's not the amount of time, of money, but it's in the act of giving and participation. So we think about that aspect of our life, and we think about it's not giving, it's returning. And that's a whole different dynamic in the way we think. How do we think about what we offer to each other? Is it always a ledger? Because that gets us into trouble. They hurt me, I hurt them. I helped them, they didn't help me back, so I'm not going to help them again. With God, it's a whole different way of thinking of how we live our lives. And it should be a joyful service. It shouldn't be grudgingly given. When we think about what we give to God, it's our whole lives. Part of that giving is faithfulness to a spouse. Part of that giving is how we teach our children. Part of that giving is truth. Part of that giving is the example. So that little story about Johnny is a reminder that what we do, our children and others are watching us, and then it perpetuates itself from one generation to the next, from one neighbor to the next. How do we treat our neighbors? How do we live our lives? How do we treat the people that we meet in the store or on the street? We cannot do anything for God, and since we can't hug him, we can't give God a dime. We can't demonstrate in concrete form love for God, but we can love those who are made in his image and likeness of God. We can hug them. We can give to them in their need. We can demonstrate to them they're vitally interested in them. We can give them our attention and time, and in loving them, we love Jesus. In the Eucharistic prayer, the wording was changed. Since we minister to Christ when we minister to one another. It's a very basic concept that we sometimes miss. Our bell choir, if there was just one person who played, it wouldn't be much of a bell choir. But they have the generosity and the cooperation to work together, so it makes a beautiful sound. I will say that I was at one of their rehearsals, and one of them had a different song than the rest as they were practicing. I forget who it was. But you see, when we're in a different concept and way of thinking, it doesn't work. But as soon as they were all in the same song, it was a whole different harmony, and it fell together. And that was just one person. Each of us makes a difference. I really encourage each of us to reflect upon how we offer ourselves to the Lord in our treasures, our talent, and our time.